welcome to your weekend. News Radio 600 Kogo. San Diego Business Weekend is on the air. I'm Sully, your host. Catch me every morning at the San Diego Morning News with Ted and LaDonna right here on News Radio 600 Kogo over at KUSI. Good morning, San Diego. And tonight, another episode, a brand new episode of On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails on KUSI at 5 p.m. tonight. And then again at 9 p.m. on Sunday night, we're going to be interviewing Shotgun Tom Kelly, radio icon, tonight at 5 p.m. And then, of course, the San Diego Chicken. If you missed the first time we interviewed him, we're going to interview him again on Sunday night, 9 p.m., all on KUSI. But in the meantime, got a big show today. Christina Gustin is going to be joining us here in just a second from RKG Wealth Management. Kristin Gaspar, District 3 County Supervisor, is with us. Tom Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era, The Intersection of Business and Politics. And then a small business person. I want to try to feature a small business every week so we can support that small business. Choice Juicery is going to be joining us. So welcome to the show. San Diego Business Weekend is on the air. Okay, so let's talk about what happened this week in the markets, because it really was an interesting week. The Dow booked a couple of back-to-back losses this week. We had a 500-point loss on Wednesday, which was the first. It was the worst loss we had in 2 weeks there. And then, of course, we saw another loss in the beginning of the days on Thursday, and then things sort of bounced back. But you have to remember, this market's running on fear and greed, and the market is forward-looking, and it's looking for a reason that this economy is going to grow. And when Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, comes out and says something as ridiculous as the economic future is highly uncertain, of course that's going to move the market. But I'll tell you why it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous because here he is at an open meeting whereby people are hanging on his every word about what's going on with the economy. And basically it would be like this: ladies and gentlemen, thanks for swinging by today. I appreciate. We'll try to keep it brief today. We are in hopes of a swift U.S. rebound, but I got nothing. So let's go to lunch. I mean, honest to goodness, that's exactly what he said. He basically said it's uncertain. Now, look, I am a fan of Jerome Powell. I don't think I've ever criticized him publicly, but that was ridiculous. And then we followed up with another 3 million people applying for unemployment compensation last week. That brings more than 36.5 million people who have applied for jobless benefits since the pandemic struck 2 months ago, and that's a scary number. Now, keep in mind, not all of those employees are still out of work. Many of those, we've clawed a lot of those back as pieces of the economy reopen. I'm going to be talking about reopening San Diego with Kristin Gaspar here momentarily, and then this morning over at KUSI at 10:40, I'm going to run over there after this show and talk about it there as well. But in the meantime, Christina Gustin is my financial planner. She's my financial professional. They are not sponsors of the program. In fact, she's just one of the smartest people I know when it comes to retirement and financial planning. And she's with RKG Wealth Management, UBS Financial. I trust her with my money. I can't say the name of her clients, but I can tell you many of my very close friends, some of which are much further out of the spectrum of retirement planning than I am, trust her as well. And Christina, thanks so much for giving up your Saturday once again for us here on San Diego Business Weekend.
Thank you for the intro, and thanks for having me on the show.
So talk about this, the return of volatility, or maybe volatility part 2 in the stock market. We've always talked about potentially having a head fake here with respect to where we were 3 months ago on the Dow, where we were close to 30,000, 29,386 was the number. We pulled back all the way to that, I don't even know the number, I think it was 18,000 something. And on the Dow, and then we come back, sort of kind of nicely, gotten back almost half our gains that we've come back. In fact, the Nasdaq's actually up for the year. Volatility abounds when you have a Fed Reserve Chairman, who, by the way, I've been a fan of so far, that comes out and really says nothing. Were you surprised that we didn't get any direction this week from the powers that be?
I wasn't surprised. Listen, the grand reopening the economies all over the world is beginning. The different phases and different speeds. Thankfully, San Diego seems to be a little farther ahead of places like Los Angeles, our neighbors to the north. But it's encouraging, right? Everyone's been looking forward to this since we hit our lows in March, saying when is economic activity going to be able to restart again? So that's encouraging. Honestly, I personally think that the markets have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves. In our House Weekly this week, we talk about how the market is currently pricing in somewhere between our central and our upside scenario as it pertains to the recovery from the global pandemic. And the equities are certainly pricing in a sharper recovery than fixed income. And in a lot of ways, it's become a tale of two markets between equities and fixed income. And as you pointed out, between tech and kind of the broader equity markets, there's a huge variance between the ways these things are recovering.
What do you say to those people that are not yet retired but close to retiring that lost 30% of their retirement, clawed back 20% of it and still climbing? How do you keep those people is there a way to talk? Is there a standard answer to say, stay the course, we've done good so far, or you still have to manage some expectations out there?
Oh my gosh! I mean, in the realm of financial planning, there's a name for that. It's a bad timing scenario when you saved your whole working career and you're about to retire, and you get a big downturn in the market. So asset allocation is not dead. Diversification is more important now than ever. And especially if you're approaching retirement, please take the time to put a financial plan together, because it will tell you how to withstand market downturns like this without doing major damage to your portfolio.
And look at, and without giving financial advice, I do want to say most financial advisors are going to keep an eye out on the cycle of stock markets and economies. And there's a lot of smart people that work at a lot of investment banking firms, a lot of retirement firms, much like UBS, that the job is to say, well, is it time for us to move to cash? Is it time for us to stay in equities? Is it time for us to go a little safer? Is there a time to go to some commodities? And I think that's part of the business that you guys are in, right? I mean, as a financial planner, that's why it's really important to have a financial planner at the helm, don't you think?
Yeah, giving advice is our job. And, if we still believe that there is the possibility of more downside in the market, our goal is to protect portfolios against that downside using things like high-quality bonds. If we're using bonds, dynamic allocation strategies that can pivot when the markets change, and diversifiers like gold and alternative investments and things like that.
Are you thinking in terms of a horizon here going forward, Christina? With regards to where you think we're going to be, let's say November, towards the election at the end of the year, are you guys thinking in terms of U-shaped recoveries, L-shaped recoveries, and what's the difference in your mind between the economy and the stock market? Because they clearly are two different things. Stock market being forward-looking, and the economy is what's happening right now. So, what are you guys feeling in terms of a rough ride versus soft landing?
Our central scenario is still calling for an S&P around 2750 by the end of this year, which is lower than we are today, not significantly lower, but a little bit. I think there will be incredible volatility between here and then, and if the central scenario plays out, that includes different forms of not necessarily resurgence of the virus, but, problems that would cause more mobility restrictions because we're worried about those flare-ups. So, that will have if that happens, that certainly is not good for the economy because you're kind of coming back in fits and starts. Whether the stock market is able to look through that to the future, I think is a function of, discoveries in the medical industry as far as treatments or, progress towards a vaccine.
Yeah, I think the piece of this that we have to understand is let's not look as investors for a comeback. Let's look for trajectories again, right? I mean, I think a lot of people are just dying because of the way the markets reacted recently. I think there was an overreaction in my opinion in the market, which was natural. If you take a 50,000 foot view, if you really truly look back on what this is, I mean, yes, it was a big dip, but we also recovered a lot. And I think we got to stop looking for comebacks immediately. We got to start looking for trends, right?
I think that's what Jerome Powell was trying to say on Wednesday. He warned of an extended period of weak economic growth. I think he was saying, don't get ahead of yourself with this recovery. It could take a while.
Yeah, and with respect to investor tastes, do you think that institutional investors are if you go back to the Great Recession, let's face it, in November of 2009, roughly 8 months after the recession ended, the stock market was up 53%, yet the economy was only up 1%. Because the stock market was forward-looking at that time, and they were betting on a recovery. It turns out they were right. With respect to this, I think one of the reasons why you're seeing some growth in the stock market is because, again, 70% of our economy, or anybody's economy, is based on consumer spending. We have a lot of stimulus out in people's pockets, including small business. And the one thing that Americans don't do when they have money in their pocket is save. They spend it, which means it goes into the coffers of small businesses in corporate America. Any chance that that's going to help rise that tide with respect to the overall economy in your estimation, or are people just surviving on that money?
I think, as soon as there is some place open where people can go spend that money, I think it will be stimulative. And I think it sounds like there may be more, there's talks about legislation to be sending people more help. So as we slowly reopen, I think that will certainly stimulate. But it's a question of how slowly or quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Christina. Christina Gustin, UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. My financial planner, again, not a sponsor of the program. No agenda-based reporting here. She's just helping us out. Coming up, when are we going to open? Supervisor Kristin Gaspar joins us here. San Diego Business Weekend, News Radio 600 KOGO.
To my life, I am not going to question why. You never know.
Hey, don't forget, News Radio 600 KOGO listeners, tonight on KUSI, a new episode of On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails. That's tonight at 5. Also airing it tomorrow night, Sunday night at 9. So now we're on 2 times a week. You can check us out, KUSI, On the Air. Thanks so much to Christina Gustin. Christina Gustin, the smartest person I know in finance, honestly, and she's my money manager. And I will tell you also, they're not sponsors of the program, as I mentioned in the last break, but I use her because she gives us this non-emotional, cogent data that kind of calms everyone down with respect to the bullets whizzing overhead when you're talking about a stock market that's running on fear and greed right now. Coming up in the program also, Tom Del Beccaro, who authored the book The Divided Era. He's an attorney, he's a columnist, he's a frequent contributor here at KOGO as well as KUSI, and I know he's a huge Kristin Gaspar fan, living up there in the Bay Area, and we'll talk to him shortly. But speaking of Kristin Gaspar, Supervisor Kristin Gaspar, 3rd District, one of my favorite people in the world. I'm also living in her district and have for many, many years. And I have to say, Supervisor Gaspar, if I were you, and you don't have to say this, but I'm going to say it, I would be frustrated if I were you of the way things are going with respect to, I'm going to say, Dictator Newsom and other members of the county supervisor corps that have sort of are acting like it's their responsibility and they're not giving everybody a voice. Now, I know you do a lot for the city of San Diego. In fact, I talked about it at KUSI this week. One of the reasons that we saw, the beach closures turn around was because of you. I also sort of feel like one of the reasons we're going to see San Diego open and be outside of a one-size-fits-all plan that Gavin Newsom has dictated is because of some of the letters and some of the phone calls you've made as well. So give us a grade here as citizens, and then give us a grade for the politicians involved with us.
Well, hey, listen, our citizens get an A+. We've seen extensive behavior change. We've seen nothing but cooperation. Today is an anniversary. Today is the 60th day of our public health order, and it's nothing to celebrate. You had mentioned just a moment ago money management. We're not going to need money managers pretty soon because we're all going to be out of money. And I'm growing increasingly concerned over the impacts of this pandemic, a continued shutdown. It's really challenging because in San Diego, we need our local control restored immediately. And so our governor is keeping us under this level of control that we can't afford to stay under. And so for right now, I can give the governor an F for keeping local control from us. It's really frustrating, and I don't know what else to say. I'm a business owner. I'm a mom. I'm failing as a teacher. We've got to get our kids back in school. My kids need to get back to their sports. Mental health and wellness is declining in this region. It's ridiculous. So we have to reopen safely. The message is a safe reopening of San Diego. We have a plan to do it. I can share that yesterday the county board came together. We're creating an acceleration plan. And on Tuesday, we have to lay that at the feet of the governor again and hope he blesses that plan. But we can't sit around and just wait for him to bless our plans. This is a last effort before the governor to say, help us safely restore our economy, help us feed our families, help us keep a roof over our heads, help us keep from economic ruin and collapse in San Diego. So Tuesday will be a big day.
Well, I have to agree. Now, you saw the Wisconsin Supreme Court strike down the governor's stay-at-home order. Any chance that that's going to be happening in California with the California Supreme Court? Because you got a lot of upset business owners, a lot of upset people on both sides of the political aisle. And, of course, there's cities like San Diego that are a shining example of how to do it right, yet we're being shoved into a one-size-fits-all baby out with the bathwater sort of plan.
Well, we have to be careful of what I am calling a nuclear option. That is, San Diego just opens tomorrow and openly defies the governor because in communities that have done this, he slapped them with a letter, and I have those letters in my hands. And what he's doing to assert control over the situation is to suggest that their emergency funding will be yanked. And for San Diego, that would be right at this point in time, $60 million yanked that we desperately need. The other thing that he's doing is pulling liquor licenses from our restaurant community, and that is an immediate closure for many in the restaurant business. They are reliant upon the revenue from that ABC license, and once that's yanked, you can't get it back. It's almost impossible, and many of those licenses are grandfathered. Then you have professional licenses that the state is in control of. These are your cosmetology licenses. If you get your cosmetology license pulled, that's a big problem. It's a mark on your record, and getting it back is going to be very challenging. If you were to go in a second day and operate without a license, that could be revoked forever. So the governor is finding ways that he does indeed still have control from the state chair over our local business community, and I'm hoping to avoid all of that. But I've got to tell you, I get calls all day now from businesses that tell me I have no choice. I'm opening tomorrow. And all you can do at that point is tell them, well, pretty please, if you open, make sure you're following all of the public health guidance. But it's really a sad situation when people that have been in this community forever, the Pancake House called me the other day, the owner there crying, been in business since 1949 and about to go under. We need to do something now.
Well, I can say, first of all, Supervisor Kristin Gaspar from the 3rd District here joining us on News Radio 600 KOGO. And I have to say, when you list out some of those weapons of economic destruction that can be heaved on San Diego businesses from our governor, I think the first thing people pounding their steering wheel listening to you all the way from San Diego to Santa Barbara is, what's the recourse here? Is there a recourse? Or are we just literally at the beck and call of someone whose absolute power is, for lack of a better word, mainlined into his veins? He's loving this, it seems like. I mean, this is his time to shine in his mind. And of course, with the mail-in ballots, we can get political here. I mean, there's all kinds of political agendas is why to keep us closed here. But what's the recourse? Is there a recourse as voters?
So the choices, the options are limited, and that's why I'm very disheartened over the entire situation. You have the legal course that some counties have decided to pursue, but think about our court system. Yeah. It's going to be a year from now before that case is even heard. That doesn't provide us any immediate relief. What I've tried to explore is an effort to join forces. We are the 5th largest county in this nation. We are the 2nd largest county in the state of California. My goal is to really align other large counties and come together as a pack, as a coalition. We're all experiencing a very similar challenge with the governor, and to show the governor that we are indeed prepared with meaningful metrics for urban counties, that we are prepared to safely reopen, and we're not going to sit around and wait. And so that coalition is kind of a side effort that we need to build immediately. And then, listen, I'm all ears for other options. I just know that he's able to assert control. Those are dangerous areas to assert control. And I'm worried because as a business owner, I don't want to make a decision that may help you temporarily, but will ultimately close your doors.
Well,
that I do not take lightly.
I think that's what you keep in mind. I know you're getting phone calls. I'm getting phone calls asking for your email address of small businesses that are gonna open, and all you can say to them is, okay, well, I can't, I can advise against it because it's, technically it's not legal. And if you're going to do anything, make sure you're keeping your social distancing and obeying the protocols, at least that the health department's put out. But I think, listen, I'm certainly not encouraging this, but just you put your ear to the ground right now, and it's different than it was last week, Kristin. I mean, you and I have talked about this on and off the air.
Absolutely.
There is this palpable, you can't get a haircut, want to bet, sort of, and I'm not sure if that's dangerous or not, but it certainly is rumbling there. And I think not just in the city of San Diego. What does that do with respect to putting pressure on him, or is he just living his life from the neck up and not? I mean, is he listening in your opinion?
Not soon enough, not quickly enough, that's for sure. Listen, Supervisor Fletcher has a close relationship with the governor. It's time to exercise that close relationship with the governor.
It was time 6 weeks ago. It was time 6 weeks ago for him to exercise that.
I agree with you, but there's no time like tomorrow, given the circumstance. So we got to lean in here. We need to share our stories as business owners with this governor, in particular as we move forward with San Diego's accelerated plan. That accelerated plan would push us deeper into phase 2 and adding businesses that are in the governor's current phase 3. I think it's going to be a reasonable, safe plan for San Diego. So to the extent possible, if we can get our community to weigh in come Tuesday with this governor, it would be very helpful. They can send their stories to me at Kristin.Gaspar at sdcounty.ca.gov. Sully, you've been doing a great job sending the business owners. As you know, I work hand in hand with these business owners, and I will go to bat for you. I will try to figure out a way that we can get you open safely. If we can get you open today under the essential workforce, that's great. If we can't, we have to have you ready and prepared. And I'm willing to work with business owners that might be struggling. So keep sending them my way.
I will. And I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll put your email up at my site here at kogo.com's keyword Sully. We'll also put it up at the KUSI website. And I can tell you right now, if you have a story about your business that's suffering as a result of that, I want you to get in touch with me directly, because I want to produce a video of stories that we can send up to the governor. I'll do it on my nickel out of my TV studio, and we'll get it done. And I'm gonna lean on you for some voiceover work, Kristin. Thank you so much.
I love it, Sully.
Once again,
yeah, we're also doing videos of what a safe opening would look like. So
yeah,
if
that's
you have
good.
a business that you'd be willing to do a walkthrough, that would be fabulous.
All right, we'll do it. Supervisor Kristin Gaspar, 3rd District. Thank you so much once again. She's fighting for you, small business. I think we need someone to in this town. I know Mayor Faulkner is as well. Jim Desmond. All right. Coming up, Tom Del Beccaro, The Divided Era, the intersection of business and politics. Stand by. More of San Diego Business Weekend. News Radio 600.
I'm not gonna
Welcome to your weekend. News Radio 600 Kogo. Sully here. Thanks to Supervisor Gaspar for swinging by, talking to us about some of the frustration we're all going through with opening this business. Coming up in the next break, Choice Juicery, a small business in San Diego. We're going to feature another small business, try to help out in supporting some small business here in San Diego. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that tonight on KUSI at 5 p.m., a brand new episode of On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails. And just got the word out of KUSI yesterday that they are now going to air the broadcast on Sunday evenings as well at 9 p.m. So you'll see Tonight at 5, we're going to interview Shotgun Tom Kelly, star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, K-Earth 101, KCBQ here in San Diego. Just an iconic name. I mean, he's as iconic as Wolfman Jack when it comes down to it. So he'll be in studio with us this evening at 5, and then tomorrow night at 9, we're going to replay the interview with Ted Gianolis, the San Diego Chicken. So that's coming up tonight on KUSI. On the Air San Diego. On the Air SD is our social tag, and On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails. So I've been talking about why it makes perfect sense that the stock market is recovering faster than the economy is going to. And although I do think there's a bit of a head fake going on with the stock market, because I know we rebounded nicely and now we're sort of going sideways and consolidating. I think that was expected. You can't expect the market with all of the nonsense going on, with another 3 million people applying for unemployment compensation last week, 36.5 million people total applying for jobless benefits in the last 2 months. You also have to understand, though, that we've clawed back some of those jobs. But here to talk about specifically California and what's under dictator Gavin Newsom is Tom Del Beccaro, the author of The Divided Era. He's a keynote speaker. He is a columnist. He's a radio TV commentator. He is an historian and an attorney. He's a frequent guest here on KOGO as well as KUSI. And Tom joins us here from sunny San Francisco, California, where it's 40 degrees and going into summertime, if I'm not mistaken. Are we going to open?
Yes.
Are we going to
open?
The
market is going sideways, as I like to say during election years.
Yeah, well, you're the one who pointed that out. The markets do go sideways during election. This is a different election year, though. Can I ask you, before we get to the national scene, dictator Gavin Newsom came out last Friday with a ridiculous ceremonial phase 2, which I thought was interesting, where he said, hey, restaurants can now have curbside service. And I'm thinking to myself, well, didn't restaurants have curbside service on Thursday? like literally nothing changed. What is going on, in your opinion, other than a power grab and an attempt to try to this is all political, is it not? This is not about our safety at this point, at least coming out of Sacramento, is it?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm a big fan of Supervisor Gaspar.
Yeah.
I hope she goes far in her career. I've supported her all along, and I'm glad she's there, but I wish she had a bigger role in deciding issues and working with people in California. As to where we are with California, look, I think a while back we talked about the fact that sometimes politicians get invested in their position and the power that comes with it, and then they have a hard time letting go of that. And you recall that Gavin Newsom in March, and many Democrats were angry with the president, saying, you don't get to decide, we get to decide. There's a big kerfuffle over that. And now Gavin Newsom's in the same position, asking, with local counties asking him, and he can't let go of it. And there's good reason for San Diego. You had Supervisor Desmond go through all the COVID deaths in the county and comes up with, I believe, 6 that were truly, you can really point to COVID. So there's a lot of frustration going on. And look, you have so many lawsuits, including the one, a huge one with all of the religious institutions suing, saying you can't ban us from the First Amendment. So I think just things are going to do an end around the power brokers. But as far as Gavin Newsom, he's like many politicians, and not necessarily one party. They like exercising power, and then they have a hard time not exercising it.
Well, Tom, I have to add, by the way, Tom Del Beccaro, author of the book The Divided Era, our guest today. You are an attorney, and I have a question for you about this, and I think you're the right guy to ask it. Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down Wisconsin stay-at-home order. Any chance the California Supreme Court will do the same?
Well, and remember that the New York court in New York reinstated the primary, saying, yes, the state has a compelling interest in health, but that compelling interest doesn't override the constitutional right to vote. And so there are cases working their way through California. The cases filed in California have been filed mainly in federal courtrooms so that federal law applies. If it was left, in my view, and I've been practicing law in this state for, do I have to really say how many years?
Yeah.
33.
Yeah.
And I would be unconvinced that this makeup of this Supreme Court would do the right thing. But the federal courts are a different issue because federal issues involved. Look, the Constitution is not the Constitution was written to restrain government, not to restrain people. The burden is on government to show a compelling interest, and that any restriction is narrowly drawn so as to be the least intrusive. Yeah. And they're not doing that. So let me give you an example. When they shut down Modoc County, which has no cases and no deaths, the same as they shut down L.A., that's not narrowly drawn. Modoc should be able to open, and you could do it under one more narrow scenario is to say that all people coming in and out of Modoc need to be checked for a fever, which is what businesses are doing. So, yes, there's been substantial overreach by the state of California, and if L.A. stays closed for 3 months, and I don't know how they do that, how they write checks going forward, I think eventually federal courts will strike a lot of this down.
Yeah. And talk about those lawsuits, because what we're hearing is there's going to be a lot of lawsuits post-mortem on this thing. Do you anticipate that, and what do those lawsuits look like?
Well, because they are saying that they're going to continue this for an extended period of time, meaning you have Garcetti and Newsom saying things like until there's a cure or a vaccine, there's going to be a level of restriction. So,
well, that's an impossible standard, Tom. That's an impossible standard. I mean, there's some COVID...
Which is why they would be struck down, right? There's no cure to a lot of diseases, but we don't shut down the country. So if they continue to stay in that framework, then yes, what I think you're going to see is that these cases, and there's two kinds of restrictions. They're on the face of it, meaning you can't ban me from expressing my religious beliefs. That's on the face of it. And then it's how it's applied. For instance, if it's applied and it only affects one religion and not another, that's a as-applied lawsuit. Sure. And so what businesses are saying is, as you're applying this, how can that business be considered essential, selling pot, which, by the way, is smoking is bad for you during this particular pandemic. Hello. Right. If that, why is that an essential business, but my business of mammograms not essential? Right. And the mammograms are incredibly, by comparison, essential, but they're not going on. So there's as-applied arguments and on the face of it arguments, and both of them have a ton of merit.
Tom, you and I talked about on the Big Biz Show. By the way, Tom Del Beccaro from the Divided Era joins us here in the program. And you and I have talked about the fact that I think there's going to be not anarchy, but I think businesses are going to start opening in the next 7 to 10 days just because they're frustrated and they're going to take a chance. How do you feel about that?
Well, consider that woman in Texas. What did she do? She opened up and suddenly she's got $500,000 in GoFundMe. If you, and I think you mentioned this the last time we talked about it, you become an instant star if you do this kind of thing. And this whole movement of frustration you talked about took a huge leap forward in California when Elon Musk, and I'm not the biggest Elon Musk fan in the history of the world, but he provided star quality to this. And because he got Alameda to bend, that's the thing. You either apply things across the board, but as soon as you start making exceptions, and the whole essential list is nothing but exceptions, you change everything. So I think you're going to see that here and there, and there's simply not enough police in this world to shut everyone down. And so they're going to get away with this thing. And look, I feel, what bothers me the most about this is, Southwest Airlines, I care about them. I fly them. They're a big business. Right. But all the waitresses, all the waiters, the bus boys, the people who cut hair. These are people, the biggest hits are obviously coming to the people who make $40,000 and less a year.
Yeah, because it's cheaper for them. It's more lucrative for them to stay home and take the unemployment.
Well, but there's also, they're just outright losing their jobs.
Yeah,
and,
true.
There are people who have these businesses. Look, I represent restaurants. I have for decades now. I know when they go into business what margins they're working with. We all know this. The failure rate of a restaurant is really high in the first 3 years, and now they have to deal with this.
Well, and of course,
let me ask
Tom,
you a question, Sully, an important question. If you want to start a new restaurant in California, why would you do that?
Yeah, you wouldn't. And I'll tell you what, reopening a restaurant is going to be just like having a startup, Tom. Tom, thanks so much. We're out of time here. Tom Del Beccaro, TomDel.com, PoliticalVanguard.com. Pick up a copy of his book, The Divided Era. Coming up, we have a San Diego small business called Choice Juicery. We're going to talk about what it's like running a company during a global pandemic. News Radio 600 KOGO. News Radio 600 KOGO. Welcome to your weekend, San Diego Business Weekend. I'm Sully. Good to have you along. Catch me every morning on the San Diego Morning News here on News Radio 600 KOGO and Good Morning San Diego on KUSI. And I would be remiss if I didn't promote our Saturday night show on KUSI called On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails, which is now also airing on Sunday evenings at 9. So excited. So we're going to have Shotgun Tom Kelly is our main guest tonight on KUSI at 5 o'clock. And then tomorrow a replay of the show we did with San Diego Chicken. So good to have you along. San Diego Business Weekend is on the air. Okay, so a couple of things here. As you heard Kristin Gaspar say, as well as Tom Del Beccaro, we're not going anywhere unless we get businesses open. And I have to talk about this a little bit because, look, the one thing people are forgetting about opening business, it's not just a function of getting the all clear and getting people out there. As I've mentioned 100 times on this program and on every other media vehicle that I'm on a daily basis, I'm scratching at the door to go out. I know that not everybody is. And look, I ain't mad at you if you want to wear a mask and you don't feel safe. I'm not going to judge you for that. I think there's a portion of the population that's uber cautious. I think there's another portion of the population that, although is taking it seriously, is ready to go. I'm one of those people. I also have elderly parents I think should stay exactly where they're at until we know what's going on. But that's just one piece of this. Until we feel safe, we're not going to have an economy. What's even more important that people are forgetting is we have to open schools. Because if you can't open schools, if you have a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or an 11-year-old, you're not going to work anyway. And that's a big piece of this. And that's the one thing, that's the one reason I wanted to talk about small business a bit here, because small business people are not just the biggest taxpayer in this county, but they're also the biggest employer in this county. I met Nastasha McKeon up in North County. She runs a juicery, actually runs 6 of them, called Choice Juicery, choicejuicery.com. And I wanted to ask her to come in to talk about what it's like to operate a business through a global pandemic and having to adapt and having to, I hate this word, as I said before, pivot, course correct. But first of all, welcome. Thanks for swinging by the studio.
Thanks for having me.
And talk about, first of all, we'll get into the business in a second, but talk about what it's been like. This is a scary thing. You have employees, you have locations, you have rent to pay, you have food provider people. What is that called?
Vendors.
Vendors, there you go.
Yeah. It's been crazy, definitely. We have roughly 65 employees, and as you said, 6 locations in San Diego. So in the beginning, I think it was really scary because we didn't know how big the impact was going to be. And every day, sales were dropping and people weren't coming in and employees were afraid, and there was not a lot of direction on like what to do, for businesses, and we were figuring it out.
Let's stop on that part because there wasn't, was there?
No.
You didn't, nobody actually said, okay, you have to change the way you put gloves on or wear a mask.
Right.
Or, I mean, you're already held to a pretty high standard with respect to sanitation and such. But all restaurants are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did you guys basically figure it out on your own and it ended up being right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that we put into place were just like common sense, you know, employees wearing masks and switching out gloves between every interaction and sterilizing things. And then later, you know, the mandates came from the CDC and the local health department. So we were, by the time those things came along, we were already putting those practices into place.
Right. I think, and I think that what's interesting is also the fact that you have employees that you have to not only keep safe, but also modify their behavior so the customers feel safe. And even though people aren't coming up to the counter anymore, it was a different place. So talk a little bit about that part.
Well, you know, for us, people are still coming up to the counter. They're able to like come in and order and go.
But they're not hanging out, though.
No, definitely not.
They're not sitting on the high tops or whatever.
Exactly.
Reading
Yeah,
stuff.
we actually aren't even allowed to allow that right now. So they're just coming in, placing their order, waiting outside, and picking it up from there, or picking it up at the curbside, giving us a call when they get there, and we run it out. So, yeah, a lot of that stuff we've just, you know, again, we're having to navigate on our own until the mandates came out later. We just put those things into place. But I would say, as you said earlier, people are on both sides. You know, you've got the people that are really afraid, you've got the people that are not as afraid. And so as an employer dealing with, you know, employees that are, you know, mixed on the
How was your employees population? Was it, I mean, I don't know if there's any calculable percentages of who feels safe. I'm going to say a third of the people feel ready to get out. A third of the people are, no way I'm going out. And a third of the people will go out cautiously.
Yes.
What was your population like of your employees?
Pretty much the same. I mean, I would say we had a third of our employee base that just didn't want to come to work anymore.
Yeah,
they just overnight decided, you know, and it came in waves, but overnight, you know, we lost entire teams, you know, just out of fear.
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, that was tough to navigate. We were hiring when most people were having to let people go.
Yeah, right.
We were having to put practices into place to make the people that were afraid feel safe to come back to work.
Right.
So it's been very tricky to navigate for sure. I would say, you know, the one thing that we do have going for us is being already set up as a grab and go business. Predominantly, people come in, our foods are packaged to go already. People already think of us for that. So I think that helped us sales wise to stay afloat during the time. But the biggest challenges were more navigating how to handle this, how to handle guests being upset and irate about having to wear a mask to come into our store, and they're yelling at our teams, and you know, but yet we're doing that to make everyone feel safe, and so it's been tricky for sure.
Nastasha McKeon is her name. She's the founder and CEO of a company right here in San Diego called Choice Juicery. There's 6 locations. Where are your locations? Let's give you some love here on the air.
We have, let's see, Solana Beach, Encinitas, both on the 101. We have Carlsbad. We have Carlsbad Gateway Center, which is near Bressie Ranch, and then we have Carlsbad Village, like right in the downtown area in Carlsbad. And then we have one out in Forest Ranch. Technically, it's called Del Sur, but everyone's like, "Where's Del Sur?" It's
Forest Ranch.
Yeah, it's basically Forest Ranch. Yeah, and then we have one in Little Italy downtown.
Wow.
So
Let's talk a little bit about a story that I've been covering for the last couple of weeks, and that's unemployment benefits. You didn't have to furlough anybody, did you?
No, we didn't furlough anybody.
So you weren't faced with employees who are angered at their employer because by rehiring their staff, the staff is not getting the extra $600 a week. That's the law of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Have you talked to local businesses around you about dealing with that? Because look, the small businesses, all they're trying to do is maintain the rules of the PPP program, whereby you have to have all of your employees hired back by the end of June, full salary and everything else. Some employees are saying, well, if I'm making less than this much money at work, it's more lucrative for me to stay home and get that's a tough argument to win.
I have friends that have businesses that are in that situation right now where they're allowed to open up again, but their employees don't want to come back because they're making more money being off. So that is a struggle. We haven't had that, thankfully, but
well, let me tell you the rules on that just came out this week from the EDD. That if you are deemed a business that's allowed to be open, and your employer calls you back to work, yet you're on unemployment and the augmented $600 a week. If you don't come back, you not only will lose your employment benefits, you have to pay back the other unemployment benefits.
No kidding.
That's the latest one, because that was the law of unintended consequences that the government didn't see coming. Is that when you sort of created a bit of a welfare state on accident. Listen, who's going to blame somebody who's making an extra few $100 a week
to be home.
by staying home? Exactly right. You talked about the fact that you were already a grab and go business here. And once again, the name of the company is Choice Juicery. You can go to choicejuicery.com and get all of their locations. And we'll talk about exactly what they do in a second. But you talked about you're a grab and go business. Have you gotten better at the grab and go world even since this has happened? Have you fine-tuned the art of touchless service and all of that
Yes,
stuff?
I would say so. Yeah, we've had to implementing things like online ordering and curbside delivery. We've even implemented our own delivery system. We're now delivering through all the food delivery programs like Grubhub and all those guys. So I would say, yeah, we've gotten even more convenient.
So you have 6 locations.
Yes.
What's keeping you from having 600 locations across the country?
Growing with integrity. I think that when I first opened up, I was offered, people love the brand and people wanted to help me grow the brand. I think I got this, 20-store deal thrown in front of my face in the first 6 months of business, but I had to say no to it because in order to do that, they wanted me to pasteurize my juice, which I refused to do.
Okay, let's talk about that because I
Yes.
learned about this from talking about you off the air. There is centrifugal juice. I'm saying that right? There's
centrifuge, yeah.
yeah. There's cold pressed juice.
Yes.
And there's another kind. What was the other kind?
So then there's also pasteurization, which
Pasteurization.
is a
There you go. You just
different
said it.
subject. But yeah, so
You guys are cold
we're
pressed.
cold pressed juice, but then there's a lot of cold pressed juice out there. If you go to the grocery store and you buy a cold pressed juice, you think you're getting a high quality product, but truthfully, if it's in a grocery store, it's been through some sort of a pasteurization process. You have to have a HACCP plan to go into the grocery store. And so those juices at the grocery store, while they might be, a lot cheaper, they're not raw anymore. So they've been through either HPP, light filtered, which basically means gamma radiated, or they've been heat pasteurized, which all of those processes extend the shelf life of the juice, but at the expense of the quality of the nutrition that you're getting. So we focus on high quality, organic, raw juice. That's our main focus. We also do amazing smoothies. I think I mentioned earlier, we're voted best smoothie in San Diego year after year. And we have an amazing bread. We do toast menu. We have salads. We have a full menu.
And this is all happening now. So if you want to get out,
please.
So here's what I suggest. This is what I'm doing this weekend. I live up in North County, but I'm going to go down to your location in Little Italy.
Oh,
because it's like a trip.
Something different, right?
That's the idea there. What do you see? I get asked every single day on almost every station, opening the economy. And you heard me just talk about the fact that I think we need to have schools open, and also there's got to be a bit of confidence. Do you think, based upon what I'm going to call I'm not going to make you say this, but I'm going to call a nonsensical stage 2, phase 2 order from Dictator Newsom last week, who basically said, you can now have curbside delivery, folks, which that was on Friday. Well, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday you had curbside delivery.
We did, and for the last few weeks,
did anything change?
So, yeah, no, I'm so confused by that.
So have you gotten any guidance as a business? Like, has there been like a fax come through or a text come through or an email saying, hi, welcome to the state of California. This is what you can and can't do.
Yes, but I feel like it's been after the fact. We were an essential business. We were never shut down. So we were having to navigate, like I said earlier, how to do things before those notices came through.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the reopening, when they announced that we were going to reopen, and then that came with even more restrictions for us.
And it's just, I think it's more unclear than ever. Listen, we're going to keep an eye on you. Nastasha McKeon, our guest, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for
And I want you to go to choicejuicery.com. And go check out what they're doing. First of all, you'll be supporting local business. You'll be supporting her employees.
Yes.
And you'll be getting the word out. And we'd love to have you back sometime. Thanks so much for swinging by.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. That does it for us. Remember, join us tonight on KUSI at 5 p.m. For On the Air with Sully, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails. Also tomorrow night at 9. News Radio 600 Kogo. Welcome to your weekend. San Diego Business Weekend on the air. You guys have a great weekend.